I wanted to learn fakie big flips again, so I started out doing a bunch of tricks that I thought would help me figure them out again to warm up. When I actually started trying them, it took me a little while to figure out that if I moved my back foot from the tip of the tail more to the side of it, it would be much easier to get the scoop needed to make the board spin around all the way so I could land on it and roll away. I wanted to do a double kickflip again, so after doing a few tricks to warm up, I started going for it. Now, the two things that helped me out the most was sliding my front foot a bit more on the board for a more stable foot position, and moving my front foot back a couple of inches to make the board spin fast enough to get all of the rotation needed. I wanted to pop shove it up this Euro gap, so after spending a little bit of time figuring out how to ollie up it, I started going for it. Now, for the first couple of tries, I just tossed myself up there, not committing to anything, until I thought that if I don't actually commit, I'm gonna get hurt. From there, it was pretty much just making sure I was going fast enough while focusing on popping the tail really hard so I could get enough air to make it up top, which is how. I wanted to manual down this manual pad, so after doing a couple quick ollies, I started trying it. Now, at first I was putting a lot of weight on my toes, and I didn't really like it, so I straightened up my posture a little bit, and that did help fix it a bit. Then I didn't like how close my feet were landing together in the manual, so I moved my front foot a bit up towards the nose before I ollied, and that made it a lot easier and more comfortable, which is how. This might be the tallest ledge I've ever grinded. Now, the biggest problem I ran into wasn't really a physical thing because I could actually hop up there pretty easily. It was more on the mental side of things because every try I had to force myself to really go for it. Even after I got my first one, which was really weird because that's when things usually get easier, but not this time I guess, so I have to keep on working on it. However, I wanted to pop shove it body vero again, so I started out doing a few pop shove-its before going for it. Now, when I started trying it, I was able to get 2 in the first 5 tries, but they felt really lucky and out of control, which I definitely wanted to fix that, and the only thing that I found that helped was just mindlessly trying it until I got comfortable doing it again. However, this manual was the hardest one I've done in a while, partially because it's been a minute since the last time I've done one this far, but mostly because of how close the manual pad was to this bank. It took me a little while to figure out how to get my weight where it needed to be fast enough to be able to pull it off. I wanted to back 50-50 shove it out, so after spending quite a few minutes getting used to the ledge, I started going for it. Now, there's multiple problems that I ran into, including landing into this crack, but once I got used to throwing the shove, the biggest problem that I had was landing really toe heavy and tic-tacking on every land, which I eventually found out that if I straightened my back a little bit and put quite a bit more weight on the heel side of the board, the problem pretty much solved itself. However, I wanted to fakie 270 feeble this quarter pipe, so after doing a few warm-up tricks, I started going for it. Now, at first I started trying to pop into it, and after some time I started to kind of get into it, but each one felt more like a missed 50-50 than a feeble, so I started trying to pivot into it instead. Now, to do that, I had to start putting some weight on my toes to get my back wheel to roll over the coping, but no matter how many I did, I still don't feel like I really locked into a feeble. What do you think? I wanted to see if I could nollie up a curb, so after doing an ollie and a switch ollie up it, I started going for it. Now, my problem wasn't that I couldn't nollie as high as a curb, it was really a mental thing. The fact of the curb being rounded on the end instead of being straight like a skate park ledge really messed with my head, and it took for someone walking on the sidewalk and me wanting to do it in front of them for me to be able to get out of my head long enough to do it. However, I want to see if I can manual around this curb before it really starts raining because it's spitting right now. Now, at first I was really concerned with how much I was going to have to turn to ride off the curb, so I kept on focusing on getting a lot of weight on my heels so I can make the turn happen. But after a couple minutes of trying it, it wasn't really working out at all. So I started focusing on making sure I got into the manual first. Then from there I started trying to get off the curb. That's the best we're going to get. It's raining too much. I wanted to see if I could kickflip over this manhole, so after doing a couple of ollies, I started trying it. Now, it actually turned out to be not as big of a deal mentally as I thought it was going to be. It was more of just making sure that I had enough speed, which the wind and rough ground didn't help at all, but I was able to get a few of them, with this one being the best one. However, I wanted to do a fakie big spin on a bank, which is something I've never done before, so after doing a few half cabs, I started just tossing some fakie big spins to see what it felt like. When I actually started going for it, it actually wasn't that hard for me, as long as I kept enough weight on my back foot to be able to roll back into the ramp, which is how. I wanted to board slide up this angled flat bar, so after doing a few on the down rail side of it, I started going for it. Now, I know I was going to have to lean back a little bit, but I was surprised to find out how closely it felt to a normal flat bar. The hardest part for me was getting off the end of the rail. It felt like it was kind of launching me off the end of it a little bit, which it did take me a few tries to get used to it, but honestly, it wasn't that big of a deal. However, I wanted to see if I could still ollie an A-frame, so after rolling back and forth on it a few times, I started going for it. Now, at first I freaked out a little bit because of how high the ramp sent me, so I started trying to go slower a little bit to calm my nerves, but I ended up going too slow a lot of the time until eventually I got one that was not too fast and not too slow. From there I was able to start working on going faster and faster until eventually getting one faster than the speed that I initially tried, which is how. I wanted to nollie lip slide this entire rail, so after doing a couple board slides, I decided to go for it. Now at first I wasn't getting a solid pop and started to think that maybe I should come back on a different day. But then one try I moved my foot closer to the center of the board, giving me a much quicker and more solid pop, which that's what helped me land on the rail a lot more solid and confident, well, most of the time. It took me 3 days to learn how to half cap heel flip on a bank, and here's why. On the first day I had to do a switch spine transfer before even getting to the ramp, and that made the setup time for the trick really short, and for the life of me I just couldn't really seem to get it. So on day 2 I went to a totally different skate park, and to my surprise I was still having a lot of trouble getting my weight centered over the board because I just wasn't really comfortable riding on the ramp. But I did eventually get comfortable enough on the ramp to finally be able to pull it off right before I deleted the footage. So I went back a couple days later and was actually able to get a few of them. I wanted to switch manual across 2 parking spaces, but after doing just one a few times I thought, why not try 2.5? How much harder can it be? It turns out a lot harder because I don't have switched manuals that well and was struggling just to make it halfway. Now this did take me a second to figure out, but the biggest thing that helped me was actually going a bit slower. Since I'm not very comfortable doing switched manuals yet, going slower helped me calm my nerves down a little bit and feel enough in control to make it all the way. However,